Welcome back. We are now in the player system, backdoor to Kilrathi, though if you look at the map that came with Wing Commander Prophecy, you will see that the Kilrathi system has a great many jump points in it, so that's not a particularly unusual characteristic. But nonetheless, this is the one the Confederation has chosen, and our job is to clear the system out so we can come back here later with the Templar Bomb.
Break and attack!
This mission involves us taking on main strength of the Kilrathi fleet, so that means there's several capital ships involved. This is the first one you've been able to see at this nav point. That's actually a new design, but I'll talk a bit more about that later. And there are, I think, 3 others over the course of the mission. Flying a Thunderbolt. Normally you do this mission in an Excalibur, but Red wanted some variety, so a Thunderbolt it is. The difficulty's not that great though, and because it's mostly strike, the Thunderbolt's a reasonable choice of fighter, so I'm actually still playing on Nightmare. That order I sent to Vaquero is a result of how the Wingman AI works. Obviously I've not seen the code, it does exist, and the guys at CIC have it, but it's not generally available. But it seems to be the case that the way that wingmen prioritise their targets is they start with a list which is ordered by some algorithm, and then when new fighters arrive they are added onto the bottom. And the problem with that is in waves like this, where you've got a new wave of fighters arriving, capital ships still alive from the previous wave, it means the wingmen will automatically target the capital ship. And that's not a good thing because the Wingman AI is absolutely terrible at dealing with cap ships when there are fighters attacking it. So Vaquero would very probably have died if I had not told him to deal with the fighters. As it is, he's doing really badly anyway. That message was his request to return to base, which for now I'm ignoring, but he's just going to carry on spamming it, so eventually it's probably going to be worth it to send him home just to stop him annoying me. And in the meantime, I'm not going to have the easiest of time dealing with these dark hits because the Thunderbolt's just not really good enough at either staying close to a dark hit or turning and keeping up with it. So just trying to hit one that's chasing somebody else is an enormous pain, hence why I've sped all this section up, because it was frustrating enough for me to look at it once, so I'm not going to inflict it on anybody else. In general though, I've had something of a reassessment of the Thunderbolt as a result of this LP. Prior to it, I generally chose the Arrow for most missions, and I didn't fly the T-Bolt that often. Since I've been doing this and I've sort of had to fly the Thunderbolt, I've picked up a few more strategies for it, and I think now I have a decision choice which the Thunderbolt's the default craft. Though I don't know that I still actually like it more than the Arrow or the Excalibur. Anyway, I'll explain a bit more about that later maybe. For now we have a new destroyer type, which, as you can probably see from the fact that it's not shooting at me, has a huge fucking blind spot with its gun coverage right behind it. Otherwise though, it's quite a good ship. It's basically a heavy destroyer the Kilrathi have supposedly built to compensate for the fact that, as we saw in earlier videos, their light destroyer gets its ass kicked by the Southampton class Terran destroyers on a fairly regular basis. This ship's much more capable of facing down the Sheffield and Coventry. Or at least it would be if it didn't have the slight problem of nobody facing guns, allowing a single fighter to destroy it without making any damage. Maybe a rush job and the shipyards there. Anyway, next nav point. 4 Kilrathi, 2 corvettes here. I've got a new strategy for Kilrathi, or at least for the opening sections of a Kilrathi engagement. Wouldn't work in an Arrow, but if you let a missile go at about 6,000 metres and then run the head-to-head pass, generally speaking, between the Thunderbolt's gunnery and the missile, that's enough damage to kill the Kilrathi. Wouldn't quite work in an Arrow since the Arrow's guns don't have the same forward firepower, so you'd not quite be able to land a killing blow. but I'd probably still try it anyway. Of course, one thing I could do in the Arrow is let 2 missiles off at the same time, since the Arrow's got 8 missiles compared to the T-Bolt 6. I haven't really worked out a way to generalise it to the later parts of engagements either. I kind of want to try triggering missiles as Kilrathi are turning towards me, but the problem is, a lot of the time if you do that, the enemy just turns away rather than actually going into a head-to-head pass, so the missile will probably be wasted. Still something to work on. I said earlier that I've developed a decision tree to work out what fighter I wanted to use for each mission. So the way that goes basically is, if the Excalibur is available, fly it. I think that's fairly straightforward. Then the rest of the fighters, if there's more than about 3 or 4 capital ships, then you probably want the longbow, unless there's also more than about 8 or so Kilrathi or Darkit. Plus, if there's any engagement which is going to be 6-on-1, you definitely want the Arrow. Otherwise, take the Thunderbolt. Now, that puts this mission borderline between Arrow and Thunderbolt, since you do have 8 Kilrathi, which is a lot, but since I've developed that tactic for going head to head and almost guarantee taking down a Kilrathi in the initial engagement, it makes it more like 6. So it makes the Thunderbolt a viable option here. As I said, this mission isn't particularly difficult. That said, I don't fly it very well. I do the normal thing with these 2 Corvettes. You can start taking some damage in the bit that I cut because, fuck Corvettes basically. We're all bored of Corvettes. I mean, I'm more bored of Corvettes than everybody else is, because I actually have to kill them, whereas you guys just have to watch it, and normally I cut it out these days. But yeah, I did my normal impatience thing and took some damage where I really shouldn't have done. Last engagement of the mission here, we've got a carrier, 4 Kilrathi, but one of them's on this side of the carrier and the other 3 are on the other side. So my plan is to take this Kilrathi out. The missile missed its initial pass, but we'll catch it on this time, and then make a beeline for the carrier. Launch the torpedo and dive for the hangar bay. Get inside it, and that will keep me safe from the Kilrathi while I deal with the carrier. Now, there is a problem with this plan, in that it does give the Kilrathi a few missile shots at me on the way in, but I was trusting to my decoys, and since this worked, I think we can more or less say we got away with that. The Kilrathi will merrily continue firing missiles at me while I am inside their carrier. These missiles, naturally enough, slam into the carrier and do normal damage to it, so I'm quite happy to encourage that, especially since it means the Kilrathi will not have the missiles available to shoot at me once I come out the other side of the wreckage of the carrier. It's a bit harder to kill a carrier from the inside this way in a Thunderbolt than it is with an Excalibur, since the Excalibur has velocity lock and the Thunderbolt doesn't, so instead of just being able to fly along parallel to the carrier's axis, I have to seesaw around so that I can point the Thunderbolt's guns at the carrier without actually crashing into it. The problem that can have from an LP perspective as well is that since you're travelling almost parallel but not quite to the hangar deck and the bulkheads and so on, you can clip through the carrier on occasions. It's very Dune, the slow Thunderbolt penetrates the carrier. Wait, that's not Dune at all. Well, you know what I mean. I assume you know what I mean, and if you don't know what I mean, this implies you haven't read Dune yet, in which case, why the hell are you watching my LP? Go read Dune. Anyway, you can clip through them, and it's not pretty, and also then trying to clip back through them is a hit and miss process, so you can end up stuck in the carrier wall for a brief period of time until you take enough damage to lose your fighter. It's not ideal. Nor, while we're on the subject of things that aren't ideal, is my piloting in this section. I seem to forget that I have missiles available to me, and I also don't give the Kilrathi anywhere near enough respect probably because I was used to, in this engagement in some of my trial runs, the Kilrathi kept colliding with the Kilrathi carrier, trying to find a way to shoot at me, and I think after that I became incapable of actually respecting them. But they do quite a lot of damage, so I really ought to have been a bit more careful over what I was doing. As a result, this Thunderbolt is now a real mess. And while I only have 2 fighters to deal with now, I am also not capable of absorbing very much more damage. I think the amount your fighter shakes is related to how nearly dead it is, and my Thunderbolt is now shaking like crazy when it gets hit. As I think I've said earlier in this video, this mission is not actually that hard, I'm just flying badly. I think, to some extent, in earlier videos I would have redone this mission, but I had a bit of a think about this, and other than the fact that I am kind of lazy, actually, when I thought about it, the videos of action LPs I prefer are when the player does have to struggle a bit, has to work a bit harder than just curb stomping the entire mission with whatever brilliant performance they felt like turning in. I mean, it is good in another way to watch a player fly really well and watch a game played really well, but the sort of tense engagements where the player comes back with half a fighter, those I've enjoyed as well, so I thought I would do one of these.
Mission objectives accomplished.
And let me know in the thread whether or not you think my low damage runs or the lucky to make it back in one piece things like this are more entertaining.
Need clearance, TCS victory.
Anyway, that does conclude this run.
Looks like the Kilrathi have been busy in their shipyards. But I guess it takes more than some new tin cans to phase you, Colonel. You're cleared to land.
So thanks for watching, I've been Ilanin, this has been Wing Commander 3 Heart of the Tiger, and join me next time when we're back on the surface of a planet. I'm sure you can hardly wait.
You really took some hits out there.